Imagine being 78 years old, but still hitting the bag like a pro. Meet Frank Gilfeather, born into the world of boxing in Scotland, raised in the grit of the Granite City.
When I was a kid growing up, there were virtually no processed foods, no packaging. There was never any packaging. Everything was wrapped in a piece of brown paper.
His commitment to training and discipline is as relevant now as ever.
My dad used to say, if you're going to do it properly. I look around at the obesity problem and the obese kids, and I feel like going up to parents and say, please, you're killing your child. Please get a grip and sort yourself out and show a good example to your child.
And when asked how he does it, Frank's answer is simple.
How can you be so quick with your hands and your footwork's great? How can you do that at 78? I wish I had the answer. I don't know any other way. That's the only way I know how to do it. And if somebody said to me, oh, could just slow down a bit, I can't.
Frank's journey is an example for all of us to stay active regardless of age.
I'm lucky. I can do what I can do at 78, and if I can do it at 80, then I'll strive to do it and keep doing it.
To watch or listen to the episode with Frank Gilfeather, visit youthfulagengsecrets.com, click on podcast, choose your preferred platform, and find episode 12.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Youthful Aging Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Vazquez. Today's guest is Mr. Frank Gilfeather. Frank is a living legend from Aberdeen, Scotland, known not only for his remarkable boxing career as a fighter and coach, but for his dedication to health and fitness at 78 years young. He was raised in a boxing household, and Frank honed his skills from an early age, going on to represent his country in the ring and later becoming a respected voice in sports journalism and community mentorship. Frank's lifetime commitment to physical activity and his insights into the importance of movement, discipline, and resilience have kept him sharp, strong, and vibrant well into his senior years. In our conversation, Frank shares invaluable insights into staying healthy and active throughout life. Here's a sneak peek of what you'll learn. Frank's philosophy on diet, exercise, and avoiding processed foods. Frank's refreshing approach to managing stress and building resilience. Old school boxing wisdom that you can apply to your own life. How Frank stays in incredible shape at 78. Frank's minimalist diet, sleep habits, training routine, thoughts on supplements, and more. I'm absolutely honored to have shared a couple of hours with Frank, and I learned a lot. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to quickly share something with you, which is my free 5 Health Hacks newsletter. If you're someone who wants to live as healthy as possible for as long as possible, but don't always have the time to listen to every podcast episode or keep up with the latest health and longevity research, then this newsletter is for you. Each week, I send out a quick, actionable newsletter featuring an inspiring quote, a summary of the latest podcast episode, a breakdown of a health topic backed by the latest research, a few of my favorite discoveries and recommendations for that week, and a question to get you thinking deeper. It's designed to be read in the time it takes you to enjoy your morning coffee. If you're interested, please head over to youthfulagengsecrets.com/subscribe to join for free. Now, let's get into this episode. Introducing Mr. Frank Gilfeather.
All right. Welcome, Frank. How are you?
I'm very well. Ricardo, it's great to talk to you away at the other side of the world from me and across the Atlantic in Toronto.
That's right.
Yeah.
So from Toronto to Scotland.
Scotland, yeah. But to the northeast of Scotland, to Aberdeen, which is called the Granite City, because virtually all the buildings are made from granite.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny. I used to have a principal out in, is that what you guys call them for school? The principal?
Yeah,
as well?
Head teacher.
That's right. Yeah, he was from Scotland.
Oh.
And he had come straight from Scotland. Like he had the thick accent and everything. And I'll be honest, I was scared of him. I was a little kid, and he used to yell at me and this one boy because we were honestly, we deserved it. We were little assholes. Like, but anyways, I remember he used to make us laugh too. Um, so Frank, I wanna first of all thank you for coming here and taking the time. I know we had some difficulties earlier, but we made it happen. So I'm really happy about that. And I just wanted to ask you first, if you don't mind, kind of sharing your backstory, specifically how you got into boxing and all that jazz with
Yeah.
growing up and related to that, if you don't mind.
No, no,
Just kind
no.
of want to understand your backstory.
Yeah, well, the boxing thing is because I come from a family of boxers. My dad, who wasn't really a boxer because he had an injury playing football or soccer, as you call it, and he from the age of 19, he had this injury which was never rectified, but 100% because he ended up with it one leg slightly shorter than the other. The reason for that was because when he got that injury, there were no antibiotics. There was no
Oh
penicillin.
wow.
So he spent a year in a cast down his leg, and he struggled after that, but he overcame it. But he never he ran a boxing club. Then he ran another one when that one ended. And so over decades, he ran several boxing clubs, and so and I had two older brothers. One is 11 years older, and another one was 9 years older, and they went to the boxing club that my dad ran. And so when I was about 4 years of age, I would go along too, just to be part of it. And so soaking up all this kind of atmosphere, and the sweatiness and the smells and the sounds of a boxing club, it kind of got ingrained into me. And so that's how it all started. My two brothers boxed; they were champions. I kept going and going and going, and won youth championships and senior titles, boxed for my country, and so on. But the beginnings came when I was about four, and so this was about 1949, 1950, and I just started going along to the boxing club. I guess it was ingrained in me, so that was in my DNA, and I just took to it, and I loved it.
So right from the beginning, so sounds like you said, it's in your blood.
Yeah.
You were born to do it,
Well, you
regardless.
know, sorry, and when I think back about it now, it just seemed a natural thing for me to do. I didn't feel awkward or weird in a sport that didn't suit me. It just suited me. And the principal reason for that is that my dad, who, who couldn't call himself a coach, but he was a teacher. And we would just sit and chat often. And even after I boxed in different tournaments and so on, we would analyze what went right, what went wrong, in a kind of measured and civilized way. And he would point out the reasons. Why do we do this? Why do we do that punch? Why do we deliver that punch? Or how do we avoid punches? That was the main thing, of course, the defense. And so I kind of learned listening to him. And he would talk about the old fighters and the people he'd seen and all that. And it became just part of us. And all the people who used to come to my house were all connected with boxing. So it was a boxing household. The talk was about not so much about the big fights or anything like that. It was about what's happening with this amateur boxing club or that one, or where are we boxing next week? And have we got boys on that tournament next week? Or where are we traveling to? All that stuff. So I was growing up listening to all of that between my dad and other people within amateur boxing. And so I just became part of it.
Right. Yeah. So what's interesting is, okay, so I think we talked about this off camera, but how I found you was I have a different channel and I follow pretty much, if you look at my channel, it's almost all combat and then there's some odd stuff that I'm interested in, like just weird stuff. But I follow a lot of boxers or boxing coaches, and then wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I just love the art of combat, and I've always been into that. Same like you, I was born into that. And so I came across you, and I was really impressed because you were hitting the bag, and then let's start from the beginning. You're 78, right?
Yes.
So not forget about the age, just the way you were hitting the bag in and of itself was impressive. But then I found out you're 78. I was like, what the hell? Like, I'm turning 40 in a week, and I don't know if I can hit the bag like you hit the bag. So I'm like, it's kind of that really impressed me. And so then I was like, I gotta follow you on my other channel, which is this one. And while this particular podcast is all about youthful aging, in other words, aging gracefully, health, longevity, all that kind of stuff, I thought it was still a great fit. And I love boxing to begin with. But with that said, what role do you think boxing played as far as your health and fitness is concerned?
Well, it was extremely important. And the reason is because it was different. Let's go back. We're talking about a different age now. When I was a kid growing up, there were virtually no processed foods. There were no fizzy drinks. Well, there were, but nothing on the scale that we have today, and nothing of the variety that we see today. So,
Mhm.
and we no microwaves. So therefore, no easy eat food. No packaged food. No packaging. There was never any packaging. Everything was wrapped in a piece of brown paper, and so you didn't have that obstacle, and it is an obstacle. And I see young kids today who are clearly overweight. And certainly in the UK, there is a major obesity problem. I think the figure is something like 50% of the population are overweight to some degree. And so, when you go and see these kids and they're walking around the supermarket with their parents and they're picking up all the stuff that's salty and sugary, potato crisps, chips, I think you call them, and all that kind of stuff, chocolate
Mhm.
bars. And you could bang, I could see these kids overweight, and I could, they could be on their own, but I could bet all the money in the world that if I went round to the next aisle and followed them round to meet their mum or their dad, they would be exactly the same. So I think where while we didn't have to be told, don't eat this, don't eat that. You know why? It wasn't available. So,
Right.
so, uh, um, so what I'm trying to say is that we now face obstacles as a, as a race. We face obstacles in food. And of course, the easier the manufacturers make it, the tastier they make it, the more attractive they make it, the more we buy into it. So I don't know, I'm maybe getting off the kind of questioning here, but
No,
we
no.
never had that in those days. So I trained from an early age. All right. I trained nonstop. And as I grew older, I trained more. By the age of 21, I was sick of boxing and I gave it up. And I'd had a couple of hundred fights. I'd boxed 17 times for my country. I'd boxed all over the UK and Europe and Ireland. And it gave me a great insight into other countries, other ways of life, other people. And for me, that was the bonus. The that I won titles and contests and so on was important. Obviously, it was, but boxing gave me so much more, and it actually opened doors for me because in those days, amateur boxing in the UK was a big deal. So in the 60s, for example, the BBC had a contract with both the governing bodies in Scotland and England to cover live all their internationals at home. So one week it would be England against the USA, and next week would be Scotland against Switzerland, and so on. And so there was a big audience, and many of us at the time became household names. So football was the big sport, but coming up a close second was boxing and amateur boxing as well. In fact, the major newspapers in Scotland all had boxing correspondents. So when we went abroad to box in Denmark, Bulgaria, Italy, wherever, they came with us. That was the importance of it. So it made many of us kind of well known, and that was good. And
Right.
the problem with that is that some of the younger guys, same age as me, would get kind of carried away with it. So that's what you got to keep. You got to keep your feet on the ground. I was always told that by my dad. You know, I'm really proud of you. You've done so well, but remember, don't get carried away.
And was your father like you in your age? Was he still coaching, still very active in that as well?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, he ran boxing clubs for you. He gave his heart and soul to amateur boxing, right? And
Right.
therefore, he gave himself to, if you like, you could call him almost like a social worker, because he opened up his
Mm.
club. He persuaded young boys to come from the community to this focal point, which was the boxing club. And therefore, he kept them out of trouble. He kept them away from crime, petty crime, kept the police at a distance, and gave these young guys something to believe in, something to make themselves proud of themselves. And that was important. So I think you were speak to me and to my dad. Now, my dad was 6 weeks off his 99th birthday when he died. And
Wow.
but he was a good living man. He never smoked, he never drank, never gambled. He lived a good life, and he gave so much back to whatever community his boxing club happened to be in at any given year. You know, we had to move around for various reasons. Whether the lease on the gym might have been up, and you know, the owner of the gym wanted the premises, so you would start a new boxing club. And he did that all the time. Many people would just say, oh, well, okay, fine, we'll forget it. But of course, by the time I was 16, I'd run out of opponents in my age group in Scotland. So my club at the time, my father had given up by then. My club at the time had said to the governing body, would you allow him to box seniors? Now, seniors in those days meant you were 17 years and older. Nowadays, it's 19. But you could be 17, you could be 30, you know, you could be 35. Uh, you are a senior. And that was it. So they said to me, yeah, you can box seniors now. And so I started at the age of 16 boxing seniors. And I started to beat the Hull. The, these were experienced guys. And I never thought about anything of it at the time, Ricardo. But the thing is this, I was boxing men and I was a boy,
Right.
right? So I'm boxing 24, 26-year-old, 27-year-olds. And it was tough. But what was kind of drummed into me was the technique, the skill of boxing.
Mhm.
Don't take punches unnecessarily. Sometimes you have to have a real bash. You have to have a go. You know, if things are tight. But generally speaking, it's all done with a science. It's all done with a brain. And that's what was instilled in me throughout my career. And of course, so I had all these contests, all the travel, all the sometimes difficult fights. And at the age of 21, I thought, well, I think enough's enough. And I would concentrate on my job as a trainee reporter, newspaper reporter. And that was great fun. So that was like a new beginning for me, and into that, and then into television and radio, and I've written a couple of books and a play, and so I kind of keep reinventing myself. So this bit on social media is all about that. It's not only am I reinventing myself, I'm reinvigorated by this. And now that I've got into it, one of the things that began to really annoy me was looking at social media boxing coaches who were
Very
just
bad.
charlatans, in my view. And I would think, wow, these people are being listened to and they're being watched and they're delivering absolute rubbish. And you know, and
Mm.
it's bad. And I don't like the fact that young people maybe want to be boxers are listening to this and they're getting all the wrong information. So that's kind of spurred me on to keep going in this journey. I love it.
I have a quite brought up a question. There's a lot of these guys now on Instagram and things like that where they line up their students
Yeah.
and they just punch them.
Oh my god.
and they ju-
I see
and
that.
and and they're, and they're hitting them in the head, like, and some of these are like
Yeah.
pretty hard shots, you know. And personally, I feel like I've been blessed and I'm lucky. I was never exposed to that. I grew up with the same mentality that you're talking about, which was like the whole objective is to number one, don't get hit
Yeah. Yeah.
and hit. But like don't for number one is like do not get hit.
No. That's
If we're talking about wrestling, or do not get taken down or pinned, you know, and nowadays it seems like, oh, we're training them to get hit. It's like, what are you talking about? You can't this listen, I'm much younger, so you know, you've forgotten more than I could ever know. But do you agree that this is stupid?
yeah.
Like it doesn't make any
It
sense.
doesn't. And
There's
of course. Right. So think about things today. We see we see men who have come through boxing careers or rugby or NFL and you call that
Mhm.
stuff. And we see them today and what they end up getting. Now, not all of the time. It's difficult to generalize, but what many of them end up getting is dementia and Alzheimer's. Now, when I was a young man, young boy growing up, I'd never heard of these words. Nobody had. They hadn't been invented. We saw
Mhm.
we saw the old guys who used to come to the gym and coach and help and just watch the sparring and so on. And I would hear the slurred speech. And you would see
Right.
the way they walk sometimes, and we just called them punchy. So
Right.
these were the guys who came up the hard way in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, boxing in the boxing booths. Have you heard of the boxing booths? So the
No.
boxing booths were the fairground boxers, right? So the fairground would the fair would come to your town for a week or a couple of weeks, and part of it would be a marquee, and outside there'd be a kind of walkway where there'd be 5 or 6 or 7 boxers, and a guy in the middle going, "Come on, come up and challenge any of these guys, and you pay money to challenge them. If you beat them, you will get X number of pounds or shillings in those days." Because we're talking about this because these booth fighters were doing that for money because
Right.
they were poor and underprivileged. But from the booths came world champions. Benny Lynch, the great Benny Lynch, the flyweight champion of the world, started his career in the boxing booth, sleeping with the horses in the traveling theatre and taking on all comers, all sizes, all weights. And he was a flyweight, he was 8 stone. And so he came through that, but so too did many, many others. Now, when I was growing up, there were old coaches used to go around. And there was a lovely old man called Freddie Tennant, who I go now, he must have lost count of the number of fights that he had in the fairgrounds and also later in the halls, in the boxing halls. And Freddie would tell me that he would walk. He would think nothing of walking 15 or 20 miles to join the boxing booth so that he can get extra money. And so that's how, boxing came from the streets. It came from people with poor backgrounds. It's not so much like that now, although, many of the amateur clubs are based in underprivileged areas within their own towns. But that's where it came from. So these guys who now, today, run boxing clubs, open them up every night for the kids to join and come and keep fit and box and learn how to box. These kids, these men are the heroes, and they should be celebrated because of that. They're the social workers in our community. They're helping the police keep crime off the streets, and these are the guys who should be lauded and praised for what they do. So, boxing plays a major part still. I'm surprised to say this. I'm surprised to hear myself saying this. It still plays a major part within our communities, when in fact, 30 years ago, I thought boxing was finished because of the medical aspects of it. So if people are starting to get dementia, and it's partly because they boxed or they headed the ball playing soccer, which is what's happening today. All I would say is, well, I saw that growing up because we didn't have the name dementia or Alzheimer's, but yeah, it's a difficult, tough, hard sport, and it takes a great deal of heroism and courage to step into that ring and face somebody at the other side who's trying to hurt you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so it really gets me upset when I see videos like that. And I can appreciate the entertainment value or whatever, but aside from that, it's like, to me it's these sadistic coaches who I don't think find it hard to believe that they don't know better,
Well,
because the information's out there, and I don't see them getting hit, and I think they're just abusing these kids.
I
And
think,
it's like, man,
yeah, you're talking about. I think I know the ones you're talking about, and I think I'm right in saying that wherever that they are, they're on the Indian subcontinent. The ones I've seen are where, and some guys have kind of stood there with their hands up in the air, and the coach
yeah.
and not hell,
It-
or either face or body, and it's excruciating. What I cannot understand is why anybody would allow themselves to be subjected to that.
well, sometimes these guys hang upside
They
down
do,
and get
yeah,
kicked in the head. I'm like, what
yeah.
what the hell am I watching? Like, and these guys are supposedly it's supposed to be preparing them to take a shot. It's like that's actually doing the opposite. It's making it so, because anybody that's fought or who has been around that, the more often you take hits, the less you can take. Like the more you get knocked out, your brain shuts off
Of
much
course,
quicker. So
of course,
it doesn't make any
you know,
sense. It's like you're and
yeah.
I don't want to see these kids in their later in life. Hopefully they're okay. Some people for some reason can get all the punishment and they're fine, and some people get concussed once or twice and they're never the same again. So
Well, I'll tell you a story. We were in Ireland once in County Donegal, way up on the west coast, and there was a guy in part of our team. It wasn't an official Scotland team. It was just a little select from our district. We went over there to box. We boxed 4 times in 2 weeks. It was basically a holiday. And one of the guys in our setup, who later became my coach, and one of my closest friends and dearest friends, he's now dead. His name was Jim Monroe. So he boxed that night, and he got knocked out. Now they carried him from the ring. There was a doctor in attendance. They carried him from the ring into this communal changing room where all the boxers were, but it was part of a church hall or something. And there was a snooker table in one side of the room. So the doctor said, just lay him on the snooker table, he'll be fine. So this is how primitive. We're talking about around about 1960. So they put Jim on the snooker table. And about an hour later, he jumped up and he said, when am I on? Oh, we said, you've been on. And he said, what do you mean you know? He said, well, you were on. You were knocked out. And he couldn't believe it. He couldn't take that in, that he'd already been in the ring and been knocked out. Now, I have never experienced being knocked out. And bizarrely and kind of weirdly, I've often thought, I wonder what it would be. I, I wonder if I could experience that just to know what it's like. Of course, it's not. So I wouldn't want to, but I often wonder what it'd be like. But you're right. So when I look at the top professionals, even the best ones, the number of punches they take to the head is frightening. It really is
Right.
frightening. And I cannot imagine for the life of me that when they retire in 10, 15 years after they retire, 20 years after they retire, of course they're bound to be affected. Of course their mind is bound to kind of slow up and their speech perhaps becomes slurred. And
Right.
from that point of view, it would be very difficult to defend boxing against an organization like the British Medical Council or something like that, the British Medical Association, because, they have the evidence. And my big surprise now is that despite them having a strong lobby politically in the last 20, 30, 40 years trying to get boxing banned, they never managed it. All people are always coming forward. But at amateur level, of course, it's much more safe. There is no accent on the financial aspects of boxing and what it can make for a promoter or a TV pay-per-view station. That's a different kettle of fish. In the amateur game, it's pure. It's more pure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I personally believe that boxing and all combat sports do more good than harm, and I don't believe you should be able to tell people what they can and can't do if they know the risks and they're getting involved. I just think that the awareness that's coming out more and more coaches are more careful now. I've gone to gyms where I could see the changes in the way they spar and the drills and almost much more preparation time with defense because they're respecting the science, right? So I think it's headed in a good direction, but there are some countries where maybe they just don't have the information or they're just not there yet, and it's to me it's sad to watch. But I wanna switch gears a little bit, and I wanna get into mindset, you know, and like you seem like you're a very healthy man and you take care of yourself. What's your mindset around health and longevity and just keeping yourself healthy, and where did you learn it?
I didn't learn it, really. I'm lucky. I'm really lucky, right? I think I'm almost a fluke of nature. My dad, I mentioned, he was almost 99 when he died, just a few weeks from his 99th birthday. Never smoked, never drank, he never gambled. He was basically a good man, right? A lot of integrity. He had humility and all that kind of characteristics that you would like to see within a person, certainly within a friend, and somebody that you could go to. I mean, I remember my house used to be full of people who had problems, and they would come to my dad, and he was almost like a counselor, and he would sit them down, and they either had drink problems or gambling issues or whatever, and he would sit them down, and we'd have to leave the room, and he would talk to them and just kind of get them through things. And so there was a kind of coterie of people who did that almost on an ongoing basis. Um, and that I always thought that's incredible. He's not prepared to turn his back on these people and say, look, don't bother me. I'm too busy. Well, he wasn't prepared to do that. He was always prepared to say, yeah, come in, sit down, let's have a chat, have a cup of tea. And so he was my role model. He was my hero. And I never set out to be like him. I and I never set out to be this kind of fitness guru who's full of good health. And I can't pretend that I'm like that. I'm not. I'm just a lucky guy who is able to do it. And people have said to me, how can you punch so strongly? How can you be so quick with your hands and your footwork's great? How can you do that at 78? I wish I had the answer. I don't know any other way. That's the only way I know how to do it. And if somebody said to me, "Oh, just slow down a bit," I can't. If I'm going to do it, let's do it properly. And maybe that's kind of throwback to what my dad used to say. If you're going to do it properly. If not, boxing is too dangerous not to do it properly. So get out. Um, so as far as the kind of healthy, I'm lucky. I have a wife, Sharon, who cooks me fresh food every single day. Now, what I've found is we've kind of morphed into this in the last, I don't know, couple of years, no more than that, where I would say to her, where was the last time we had red meat? No, I can't remember the last time I had red meat. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not a big fan of red meat anyway, but sometimes I used to think, oh, I'd love a steak. Then when you had a steak, you think, well, that wasn't everything it was cracked up to be. So I eat chicken, but the big thing is I now find myself kind of edging more and more just by default, more than anything else, because my wife cooks this stuff and it's brilliant. Vegetarianism. So I'm finding that I have a meal and I'll say, that was brilliant. That was really delicious, but there was no prawns in it. There was no chicken. There was no beef. There was no pork. It was just vegetables. But it tasted fantastic. So I've now come to learn, Ricardo, that for a dish to be delicious, doesn't have to be doesn't have to contain meat. Now, I was saying that I'm probably now 85% vegetarian, but it's just happened by evolution. It's not happened because we've designed it that way and thought, right, we're now going to be vegetarians. It's just happened that way. And I think more and more my wife will put down food and realize there is no meat in there. And she'll know that I'm loving it. So I'm lucky. I've got it in my DNA. My dad was always a fit guy, but he never trained because he had this kind of injury that when he was 19 and before there was antibiotics and all that. But he was never fat. He was never overweight. He was well built in a barrel chest, and he was just a good living guy. And I'm lucky that I inherited those genes from him. So I'm not standing up and saying, look at me, how great am I at 78? I'm not. And what I'm saying is, I'm lucky. I could do what I could do at 78. And if I could do it at 80, then I'll strive to do it when I'm 85 and keep doing it. If I slow down, it doesn't matter. I have no injuries, I have no joint problems. And so if I'm that way inclined, then I'll keep doing it.
That's awesome. And so on the topic of diet, for example, could you walk me through like a typical day
Yep.
of what you eat and when? Like when you start eating, what you eat, what you drink, if you don't mind?
Okay, sure thing. Right. For a start, my wife's got a big deal about water, how much water we should drink. And having a glass of water would be the last thing that enters my mind. But I don't know why. So, and I think, oh, okay, next sit there and drink that. But what she does now, or what she mainly does, the water will come in part of diluting juice or some kind of thing that makes it taste better for me. I think water's boring, but so I never. And even in the gym, I see all the kids are drinking water. You'll have a break on, and I coach them. I said, we'll have a break now, and they'll go at their water bottle. Oh, I don't have a water bottle. I
Yeah,
know.
like me right here.
Yeah. And they're all like everybody's like that now, and and I think that's wonderful because of what I know about the consumption of water and how necessary it is. That's wonderful. I can't get into it. I drink kind of diluting juice and that kind of stuff. That's when I get my water. So let me tell you about my day in terms of food. Every morning is the same. I have toast with, and it's brown seeded bread. And it took my wife years and years and years to get me onto that brown seeded bread. It was, for me, it was cardboard, but I'm on it now. Now I've been on for several years, and on the bread is I have apricot jam. I love apricot jam, right? And a cup of tea, and then mid morning I will have a cup of coffee, which we make on a filtered coffee machine, 1 cup. And then after that, I'll probably have around about lunchtime, early afternoon, a fruit salad with yogurt. So it'll be grapes, banana, tangerine, anything like that, and a couple of dollops of yogurt. And then we have our main meal, which is very often it's pasta. We'll have some chicken sometimes, rice, vegetarian dishes baked in the oven, that kind of stuff. We'll have that no later, at the very late at 6 o'clock, but usually by 5 o'clock. And then I have nothing to eat till breakfast time the next day. That's made a big difference to me. I think that whole 16 hours or whatever it is dieting throughout the night, fasting, has improved my health and my mobility, perhaps. Would I be able to do what I do if I wasn't on that diet? Probably. But this is what I'm doing now in terms of eating has enhanced what I'm able to do, I feel. And so it's made a huge difference. So maybe that's a secret. Certainly the fasting between 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock or 8:30 the next morning is fantastic. And I would, I would edge people in that direction. Certainly people of a certain age who think they're couch bound and they're not, not moving, they're not walking, and they're not going to the gym. At least please cut. And this is the other thing: cut out the rubbish, cut out the fizzy drinks, cut out the salted snacks, all that stuff, chocolate bars, all that stuff. That doesn't exist in my diet, because apart from now and again, if I'm in the supermarket and I see, well, let's have a bar of chocolate. But I can't remember the last time I had chocolate. Maybe 6 weeks ago, something like that. I very occasionally have a bit with a cup of coffee in the evening. So that with that evening meal, my cup of coffee would be there. And I'm not trying. So I'm not saying I'm St. Francis. What I'm saying is, I will happily have with my evening meal a glass of red wine. So if you like, it's a Mediterranean diet I'm trying to follow without actually going down that road. But I know when I look at it, this is the Mediterranean diet, and it's working for me. So that's how I do it.
That's really cool. Just curious, on when's your birthday? When's your
My
birthday?
birthday, December 30.
Oh, it just passed.
Yes.
Happy belated.
Thank you.
I'll remember that, December 30th. I was gonna say, did you have cake?
No, I don't actually. Do you know what? There's a thing about my birthday, because it falls between Christmas and New Year.
Right.
And nobody ever remembered my birthday. It was going
That sucks.
and when I remember vividly the day I was 21, and when I remembered when I was 21, around about lunchtime, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I don't know what made me, something clicked in my mind. And I thought, oh, I know, it's my birthday today. I'm 21.
Oh my God.
And then I thought, and then 30 seconds later, right, let's move on. So for me, and if this annoys my wife, and she'll say, well, we've got to get a birthday present for Paul and for Stephen or Lucy or Catherine or children. And I go, Yeah, okay, fine. And she goes, well, where's your enthusiasm? And I'm, well, okay, fine, that's a birthday. But it was no big deal for me growing up. And I think partly because of the era that I grew up in, nobody would do, nobody had money to buy presents. And
Right.
then partly because my birthday fell between Christmas and New Year. Hogmanay, of course, which was the day after my birthday when everybody celebrated moving into the new year. So nobody ever remembered. Sometimes they would think about it a couple of days later and say, "Oh, it was your birthday a couple of days ago."
That's funny. So do you, aside from your diet, seems like more Mediterranean style diet and the intermittent fasting, do you take any supplements or any medication supplements, anything like that?
Zero, nothing, nothing.
Nothing.
Got a
Nothing.
big. I've got a big deal about that. Big thing about that. My dad never took a pill in his life. Headaches. If he had a headache, we never knew about it. If he was in any way ill, sick in any way, no matter how minor, he never took anything. And nor did he tell us what if he was feeling bad or unwell or a headache or whatever. And so I followed that route. I never take pills and or supplements. And one of the things, Ricardo, while I'm on that subject, I've had approaches from um, companies who manufacture supplements and protein pills and all that stuff that they do, and vitamin pills and all that, saying to me, we can send you this and we can send you that, looking for a mention on my channels. And I would just say, don't bother, because I would just put them in the bin. They mean nothing to me. Now, I'm not discounting them. And I hate the thought, I wouldn't like anybody to think, saying, oh, what does he know better? I know nothing about it. And I'm not trying to be some kind of expert. These supplements, these vitamin pills, and all these things might help people. I'm sure they do. But for me, I'm not interested. And I never take them. No.
Interesting. Do you, as far as like prevention or maintenance and things like that, do you believe in regular checkups, or, just checking your blood, your levels to see, am I good on this vitamin or that, or you just go by how you feel, or how do you approach that?
That's exactly what I do. Um, I don't. I now went to the GP for goodness knows how long. I mean, last time I went to the GP several years ago, uh, she said, "You've got the thinnest file in our practice." She said, "What for us?" And it was something. It was a near problem or something I had, and so I've never, I listen. I'm lucky. I'm not, I'm lucky. I imagine a guy at my age, and I get comments and questions on Instagram and TikTok saying, "Oh, have you had problems with your shoulders, with your elbows, with your hands?" And I'm almost at the point of saying, I'd love to be able to say, yes, I have. And this is how I overcame them. But the bottom line is, the honest truth is, I never heard any of these problems. Okay, when I was boxing, I burst a couple of knuckles at some point. I think I broke a finger, a pinky once. Can't remember how I did that. And that was it. But I've never had any. And the only time I've ever been in hospital was to have like tonsils out when I was 19. So I'm lucky. What can I say? I can't offer you any kind of miracle cure for anything, or say, this is what you should be doing. All I can say is, this is what I do. And if you were to replicate what I do, you might be lucky, like me, and not have the issues that many 78-year-old people do.
Right. Interesting. That's really fascinating. There's a component of good genetics for sure,
I think so. Yeah.
which is, I guess, you could say, luck or fate. And speaking of luck or fate, do you believe in? You don't have to answer this, but do you believe in a higher power or a god or some sort like that? Are you a religious man or a spiritual man by any means?
Well, I was raised a Catholic, and I would go to mass every Sunday with my dad, and it was terrible. It was boring, because you're a kid, and I kind of fell away from the church for years and years, but I never gave up on it. And even today, well, up until maybe a couple of years ago, my wife and I would go to mass on a Sunday morning, and but then if you miss a couple of Sundays and you kind of get back into the habit, because it is a habit, you need to be fully invested in it. Um, do I believe in a higher power? And coming round more and more today to give you the answer, not particularly. But maybe I'm hedging my bets. Maybe I'm saying, well, maybe there is one there. I mean, all our family grew up believing in a God and but believing there's something out there. Now, I came to the conclusion many years ago that for me, God was your conscience. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but for me, it meant if you follow your conscience and try and do good things, and help other people, then that makes me feel good, and it makes me feel like, okay, I've done something good. It may not necessarily be a God there, but my conscience is telling me what's right and what's wrong, and how can I help that guy? How can I help that person? And it just things that I can't give you, I can't give you specifics, but stupid things in the supermarket. So there's an old woman in front of me at the checkout, and I'm waiting, and so the checkout woman says, "Yeah, it'll be such and such, £10, 61 or whatever." And the woman's going like this, and she pulls out, I don't know, £8, and she said, "I didn't think it'd be so expensive." And the woman said, "Oh well, we'll have to we'll have to see about this. We'll have to put the goods back and all that." And I thought, why bother? So I just said to the old woman, "Take your shopping and disappear." And the checkout woman said, "Oh, what do you think you're doing?" I said, "I'll just pick that up." And so I didn't do it for praise or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that comes naturally to me. And why does that come naturally? Because it's the kind of thing my father would have done.
Right.
And I hate when there's an issue, and there's been some where you kind of come across them in the streets or whatever, where people turn away from others who are maybe in a difficult situation or in trouble or whatever. And so how can you do that? How can you turn away? Okay, I get it now, where the streets are filled with dangerous people, but they're not all dangerous. And I
Right.
figure I always took the view, if you try to speak to people and reason with them and see, now this is the key for me, try and see their point of view, then things become easier. But if you go head on with somebody and it's like, I have one point of view, you've got another, and you're wrong and I'm right. If you go down that road, my view is you're not going to get anywhere. I disagree with you. I could say to somebody, you've got your point of view. You're not going to change my view, but I accept that you have a point of view, and you are perfectly entitled to have your point of view. Why not? We're in a free society. Freedom of speech is everything. And I'll tell you a story, and I don't know if it's any use to you. I wrote a column for the evening paper here in Aberdeen for 20 years. I used to work many years ago as a reporter there, but my career moved on and on and on. They came back to me and said, "You write a weekly column." It was a opinion column, right? And there was an issue 2 or 3 years ago where many girls in Scotland were complaining that they were having their drinks spiked when they were out at nightclubs and so on. And so I wrote a column about this. And I said, well, the way things are, you, you no matter who you are, you have got to take responsibility for your own safety, right? Perfectly, in my view, perfectly reasonable stance to take. So if you're going out as a young girl, please be safe and take responsibility for your own safety. Don't expect somebody else to help you. So the upshot of that one was that a member of parliament here uh, from the Scottish National Party instantly wrote a letter and tweeted it for public consumption. I wrote a letter to the editor of the paper calling for my head and saying that I was fit to learn. And I said, okay, so the editor phoned me. He's in a panic because this woman's an MP. And he said, you've got to apologize. And I said, for what? Well, I think you've crossed the line. He was using her language, by the way. I said, in what way? He said, well, that bit where you said that, people have got to take responsibility for your own safety. And I said to him, who takes responsibility for your safety when you're out at night? And there was radio silence. He couldn't answer. And he said, well, I still think with you. Anyway, the bottom line was, I said, I'm sorry, I can't apologize for that. Why should I? But so this woman was trying to get me the sack, this MP. And you've got to be, my dad always told me, whatever happens, be true to yourself. Whether you're right or wrong in other people's eyes, if it's in your heart and in your mind that you're right, and you've examined all the arguments, then just be true to what your beliefs are. So going back to, is there a higher power? Perhaps. Am I convinced 100%? No.
I like that story. And I see where you're coming from. So you never did apologize. I agree with what you're saying, by the way. I don't think you meant it the way the lady was trying to make it seem like you did.
No.
And that's what I hate about these. They virtue signal,
Oh,
They try to almost pin you in a
they
corner,
do.
and it's like, this is what you meant.
Yeah.
You're
Exactly.
It's like, no, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
I meant that
And
people need to be aware.
the other thing is, this is the editor I spoke to. And I said, I just call him out on this. And I said, right away, I said, did you read the column? He said, no. But
Yeah.
I said, but it went in the paper. So who read it? He said, well, the sub-editor read it. I said, the sub-editor thought it was okay to go in. Yeah, so it went in. So what's the big deal? I said, you're running scared because a member of parliament didn't like what I'd written. And instead of standing up for me and saying, well, that's his opinion. That's why we pay him to write this column. And I said, publish the women's letter and let's see what the readers think. Anyway, they're running scared. And I don't like, I think you've got to start this woman, in my view, this woman was almost bullying. Sack this guy or we're going to kick up a stink. And they caved into her. Anyway, I'm still here.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate, but that's something that's happened to many people with this whole cancel culture, and we should be able to have opinions, even if they're not an opinion that you agree with. It's what starts a good conversation.
When you start to offend people, that's when it gets difficult. And if you set out deliberately to offend, or not so much offend, but insult people, then I don't hold anything with that. I think you have to be called out if that's what you're intending to do. If you're setting out a matter of opinion, which is not designed to offend or insult somebody, that's fair enough.
Right. So with respect to on the same thing of the higher power or whatnot, when we talked about mindset and your beliefs, it seems to me like you're a pretty, this is, we have a very limited interaction, but it seems like you're a very even keeled person. Like you don't fly off the handle really easily. You seem quite patient.
Yeah.
Is that a good assessment of you? I know we don't know each other that well, but it seems like you're a pretty um level-headed. Like you think things through. You don't just react. You like to think. And is that a fair assessment of you and perhaps your
I
father,
think
which you
so.
seem to have been
I think
influenced?
you're absolutely right. And I took that from my dad. I mean, my dad, well, my dad had a short fuse sometimes, but then he grew up.
Yeah.
He grew up in very difficult times. He lost his father in World War One, and my dad was just
Oh,
6 when his father was killed. So,
oh,
and even
wow.
at the age of 6, with a mother with 3 other sons, so there's 4 sons, and he was a level-headed guy, and he was a strong character of a man. Even at the age of 6, he had to accept some responsibility within that house, whether it was, running errands or seeing to this or doing that for his mother or whatever. And he was
Yeah.
devoted to his mother, my grandmother, devoted to her dying day. He would, we'd go and see her 2, 3 times a week. He would take us a couple of times a week after mass every Sunday, and we'd go for lunch. She was a focal point for all of us. Um, am I level headed? I think so. And I always, I quote this. This maybe sounds a bit corny, but there's a great poem which you'll probably know called "If" by Rudyard Kipling, and it kind of takes you through the question if this, if that, you'll be a man, my son. So it's his father talking to his son, about all the different things he should or could be doing. And there's one line in it which says, if you can take triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, you'll be a man, my son. Now they are imposters. People fight, if you there's triumphs. Oh wow, look at me punching the air, gloating, Tyson Fury stuff, demeaning people, being disgusting in their behavior. That's that's the triumphalism which I dislike intensely. Then the other thing
Mm,
was triumph and disaster. You have a disaster in your life. You've got to think, well, I can get over this. I could, it might not happen tomorrow or next day or next year. I can get over this. So triumph and disaster is somewhere in the middle, which you can, if you can treat those two imposters just the same, then I think if you think in that way, then you'll get through your difficult times, and there will be absolutely no need for you to be a kind of blowhard, the kind of people that we see in boxing today. All this nonsense that you see at press conferences and weigh-ins and head to head. I think I saw on the news earlier on, Usyk and Fury head to head smacking each other. What?
yeah.
Do people, are we stupid enough that that's going to make us want to see them fight? I just want to see them box. I don't want to see all this nonsense. Oh, I must buy a ticket for that, or I must go into the zone and pay per view to see that fight because look at them, they're clashing heads, they're arguing. It's show business. It's professional wrestling, WWE that used to be. And so, or WWF, the two organizations, didn't they? And so that's what we're going back to. And I don't like it. I think boxing in its purest sense lies in the communities, lies within the amateur boxing clubs.
I agree with you. I don't like it either, but the truth is, controversy sells, and it's this drama that they create and the negativity that comes with it. It does sell, and it's unfortunate because now the best fighters are not necessarily the most popular. And the most popular fighters are often the ones that are the most disrespectful or the loudest, or they get arrested on the weekends and they say all kinds of nonsense, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because it drowns out the ones who are more humble and quiet and that really have talent.
Yes.
The same thing applies in MMA and if you watch UFC or any of that, you see these like larger than life personalities are like, like Conor McGregor. He's a
Yeah.
phenomenal athlete,
Yeah.
phenomenal fighter. He's not the best though, but he's the most popular and it's because of that same showboating and loud and obnoxious and
Well, that's probably true, Ricardo. But my take on it is this: it's a turn off for me, right? And
yeah,
I these oh, the overriding feeling I get when I see the Conor McGregors and the Tyson Furies and these kind of guys is I hate them. I think there is absolutely no need for you. And I don't, I might argue with you that the public are now, we're treating the public like kids, like idiots. And rather than saying, this is the big fight, you might go back to the great days watching and reading Ring Magazine and watching big fights uh, where the two protagonists walk down the aisle, no music, no flashing lights, no thumping bass, music. They get into the ring. The ring announcer takes 3 minutes to announce it's the heavyweight championship. It's between so and so, and the referee is so and so. Now you've got Michael Buffer and these guys who are the ring announcers taking 10 minutes to get around to actually naming the fighters because you get everything. What they're wearing, these color shorts. Yeah, we could see that. We got eyes. We don't need to see what he's being told what color shorts he's wearing. They weigh in at this. Well, that's fine. We need to know that. The judges are A, B, and C. We don't need to know who the judges are. And next thing is you'll be getting the judges' addresses and their phone numbers, their inside light measurement. Where it's crazy. It goes on and on and on. Meanwhile, somebody who's paid, I don't know what they pay for these fights now to go and watch them live. But if I'm there, I've paid, I don't know, $1,000 or whatever they pay, and I'm ringside, I just think, come on, just get on with it. I've been waiting months for this contest. Why drag it out for another half hour? Let's go on with it. That's what I loved about the old boxers. The Sugar Ray Robinsons, Rocky Marciano, Joe Louis, go in, do the business, out. And there was no kind of big TV deal in those days. And this is the thing, right? Professional boxing nowadays is dictated to by the TV networks and the
right.
promoters. So here's my question: what's happened to the British Boxing Board of Control, the WBO, the WBC, all these random? Some of them are random boxing organizations who are getting, I don't know, 3% of the gate money, 2% of the TV money or whatever. And what they've effectively done is just step back and say to the promoters, on you go, do exactly as you please. And there is no kind of ruling over what they're doing. Nobody's stepping in to say, you can't do that. We need to do it this way. This is the way we want it. They're just taking the money, stepping back, and allowing the promoters to run the show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different time for sure. And I can appreciate both sides of it, but I definitely see where you're coming from too. Because sometimes now the fights start late and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna fall asleep by the time even the co-main event starts. So Frank, I want to ask you what do you do for um managing stress and that, if you have any, how do you, any tips for people, like how you manage stress, or life always has its ups and downs, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be good times, bad times. How do you navigate that, the tough times, the overwhelming emotions and things like that, because that's important for health, right? So I'm just curious how you navigate through that.
Well, that's an interesting point. Listen, I if I was, I used to say to everybody, I refuse to recognize stress. Right now, that's a very glib statement because, and I'm not trying to say everybody should be the same as me. What I'm saying is, somehow I don't suppress it, but I keep it within myself, and I don't see it's anybody's problem or anybody's business. I've never discussed stress with a close friend or anybody like that. My wife is my closest friend, and we would discuss things if we had problems over whatever, family issues, I don't know, financial issues, anything like that. I think the key for me is I don't let stress get on top of me. It,
Right.
because I think it's a downward spiral and it's unhealthy. Now, that's easy for me to see because I can manage stress. Um, I'm trying to put myself into the shoes of people who find it difficult to manage stress. And so I guess what I'm saying is, if you have a close friend, but they've got to be really, really close. I know I have lots of friends, and I have no close friends now. My closest friend died about a year ago, and but even then, I would never discuss uh, such personal stuff with him. Now that's just me. I'm finding myself sounding terrible here, as if I'm some kind of a wearing so yeah. Guru. What I would say to people with stress is try and get some physical activity into your life if you can. Now, if you're a certain age and a certain physique, yet that's never going to happen. You know what I used to say to people, to kids? Um, I once wrote a play for the theatre in my native Dundee Repertory Theatre. And that was a famous repertory theatre because it spawned the careers of people like Edward Fox and Glenda Jackson and Vanessa Redgrave. They all started their careers at Dundee Red. So many, many more. Brian Cox, a good friend of mine from Succession. And Brian and I were at school together, different schools, but the same age. And we first encountered each other at Dundee Rep when I went to see a play. And he was in it in a small role. He was only 16, and I was terribly jealous. And we kept in touch since then. But the thing is, if you can't be physically active, and in other words, something that will relieve your stress or help a bit with it, then do you know what I hope that it's easy for me to say this is terrible. I'm trying to get my head around this. Write things down. Write things, anything. Write things about yourself. Write things about your family. Write things about your past life. Write things down. If you've got a laptop or a PC, all the better. But if not, get a notebook and write things down. And that may, I hope, alleviate some of the stress and tension that you're feeling. Uh, and it's a great therapy. I always found writing's great therapy. And you
Right.
would get stuff out and you'll feel good at the end of it. And you'd feel things, well, and you learn stuff about yourself. You dredge up stuff in your mind that you'd forgotten about. See, oh, wow, I remember that. So write about your family, write about your own life, preferably about your own life, and tell yourself the story of your life and where it's going and where it's been and the difficulties and the people that you met and the people you knew and the bad guys and the good guys for me, and I'd love to, you know what? I'd love to hear some feedback on that thinking. And also, I'd love people who take that advice from me to get back in some way to say that helped me. That's like winning the world championship for me. If one person came back and said, "You know what? That was a great shout you gave us." I went away and I wrote down about my childhood, about my brother, about the people I knew,
Mhm.
the people I lost, and all that. It's a wonderful therapy, writing.
I totally agree with you, by the way. I can give you some feedback. I number one, I believe in exercise as a form of, self therapy. I think it's really
Yeah.
important. And I'm a big reader and writer. I write a lot, right? I write for work, I write for everything, but I also write my thoughts. And I've been like that for a long time. And I think it's very, very helpful
Yeah.
because if you keep it all in your head, it's stuck there in a sense. And I feel like when I write, it's almost like I'm bleeding on the page. It's like I'm
Yeah.
I'm able to organize my thoughts and I get it out.
Yeah.
And then if I go to sleep, I wake up with clarity sometimes.
Well,
Like it's like,
that's,
like an epiphany.
that's interesting, Ricardo. One of the things that I struggle with just now is getting off to sleep. Right.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask you about that.
Not so very long ago, I could sleep on a tightrope and nobody would get me wakened. I I loved sleeping. And what's happened recently is partly because of this whole scenario of the social media stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, I go to bed and I'm in the middle of writing another book. This time I'm trying a crime novel, right? And I was so lazy. I put it to the side and I go back to it weeks later and I forget about it. I said, oh, right, I must go back. And then I go, maybe I'll try something. So I kind of, my brain flits from thing to thing. And I go to bed at night and I'm thinking, all right, what have I got on tomorrow? Right, I've got Ricardo on a podcast. I've got this to do. Got to record some videos to, and what am I going to say there? And I'll have to write this thing that some guys asked me to write 500 words, and I'm doing my own. I'm going to be doing my own podcast. I need to fix up guests, all that stuff. And I find out how my mind is racing, and I try to get myself to just cool my jets and say, hang on, just try and go to sleep. Eventually I get to sleep, but if I'm waking up at one point during the night, try and get back to sleep. It's not because I'm worried about anything. It's because I want to be in order. I want to be kind of make sure that everything's in place the next day and I know what I'm going to be doing. So from that point of view, this whole kind of thing about my reinventing myself on TikTok and Instagram has been a nightmare.
It was funny. I was gonna ask you that was my next question. Like how do you recover? What do you do for recovery, which includes sleep and you obviously do a lot and cognitively you're sharp. So I know you're going. And then like right now over there it's what? Uh
Oh, it's
nine
like
something?
9:15, 9:20. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I'm keeping you.
There were right.
But this is like you've already talked to several people. We had our delays earlier, which
Yeah.
was well over an hour. You're training,
Yeah.
so how do you recover from that? Even when times where you're struggling to get to sleep and what's your secret or what's your routine?
But my
Because
routine,
do you sleep a lot? Do you sleep a lot or
well, no, but I was just going to say that, sometimes maybe if I've eaten at 5 o'clock, say, and I like to, so at 6 o'clock news bulletins coming up, I liked what, really? I watch the 6 o'clock news bulletins for half an hour, and then I'll say to my wife, I'm going to have a nap. And I just lie down on the couch. And you know what? You could throw hand grenades in my living and you would waken me. I'm completely oblivious. And maybe that's my problem. Shauna keeps saying to me, listen, if you didn't have that nap, you would get the sleep. So I've tried it, right? I'm not going to, and I feel myself that I'm needing to sleep. No, I'll fight it. And I'll watch a documentary or whatever. And then we'll go to bed and it's made absolutely no difference. I'm still thinking, all right, how to get to sleep. So I don't know. I do nap for 30 to 60 minutes, kind of late afternoon or 6 o'clock thereabouts. And that's great. I got it's the best sleep I get. But not that I don't know, sounding like I'm still got some kind of sleep problem. I don't. I eventually get to sleep, and then in the morning try and get me up early, and it's virtually impossible. We're off early tomorrow to a place called Elgin to do a seminar up there, and that kind of spurs me on. I'm thinking, wow, I'm looking forward to this. I'm just a
that's
lucky guy.
awesome.
I'm just lucky that I've got so much going on in my life at this age. Or
That's
when
beautiful.
I look around and see some people my age, I'm thinking, well, they've given up, and they're maybe terrible, and it's terrible. I just wish, and I would hope for future generations that we look at what we're doing now and learn lessons from what we shouldn't do as much as from what we should be doing. And, and I look around at the obesity problem and the obese kids, and I feel like going up to parents when I'm out in the street, when I see them walking with their obese kids, and I feel like going up and saying, please, you're killing your child. Please get a grip and sort yourself out and show a good example to your child. And because this boy or this girl is going to suffer, and it's going to probably die much younger than they should. And so I would love to get that message over. And to be honest with you, the comments on my videos are such that I'm getting the message through. I get so many messages from people who are of a certain age who say, I haven't been in the gym for years, but you inspired me to go back to the gym. I'm going to go back, and I am back, and I take my friends with me. We're going 3 times a week, and we're doing this. And my answer is, I'm proud of you. Don't overdo it. Make sure everything's done within your own limits, and don't push it too much. Otherwise, it could have an adverse effect. So this is the big deal for me. If people are acting on my advice on boxing, that's great. And B, if they're actually going back to punch the bag, even though they're useless or whatever, but they're being active, that's a big plus for me. That's what I love to hear.
Well, you're certainly a inspiration for myself as well. And I mean that because I look at that as, oh, this is what's possible. And it's a target to aim for, because most people, their goal is, they want to retire. I don't believe in retirement.
No.
I don't even know what that means. Like, to me, it's, I never want to stop pursuing something, right?
Yeah.
You might want to switch careers, sure, but you never could just say, oh, I'm done, I'm just gonna do nothing all day. Like, no, that's where you die. So I look at how you are. It's an inspiration. And I know for a fact that there's tons of people that would hear your words or see you doing what you're doing, and they just like, I got to get my ass up. I'm like, I got to get moving. I got to get pushing.
It's all up there.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm taking away mostly from you is you have a very strong mind, and I think you got it from your dad.
Your barrier is up there, not your body. Your barrier is up there. If you get over that first hurdle, which is up there, which is saying, nah, you don't want to go to the gym. Why do you want to do something nice on TV or have a beer or whatever? But if you can't overcome that barrier, you've got no chance.
I agree.
If you say, right, I'm going to go and do it. And then you at the end of it, you think, wow, I wish I hadn't done that because I'm sore, or I'm tired, I'm aching. I'm not going back. That's your next barriers to overcome. Go back. You hated it? Yeah, because you hadn't done it for 20 or 30 years. Go back, and keep going back. You know what? In a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you'll think, wow, I'm glad I did that. And it's given me a new lease of life.
100%. And on the topic of sleep, how many hours of sleep would you say you do get once you finally get to sleep on average?
Bro, 8.
Oh, so you do sleep a lot.
Bro, it's interrupted. Lots of it is interrupted. And then, but that's what I was saying to you earlier. My wife will get up in the morning and she knows now. She said, "You're not a morning person, are you?" And I said, "No." And maybe it's going back to my boxing days when my coach used to knock on the door at 6 o'clock in the morning and say, "Right, ready." And I'd be ready to do 3 miles, 4 miles of running with heavy army-style boots on. Not the army-style boots that you wear now, but the ones what we call tackety boots. So they're all tacks and heavy, metal studs at the bottom, heavy boots like the coal miners would wear. And we'd go around. Maybe that's a throwback. I'm hopeless in the mornings, absolutely useless. And if I get requests for things like this podcast and so on, I'll say, yeah, I can make it kind of late morning, early afternoon because I'm better at night. At night time, I can go on for ages. My first book I wrote, and it was a ghostwritten book of a football soccer manager I wrote. And I did it. I wrote every night till 2 and 3 in the morning because that was when I felt at my best. And
Mhm.
so maybe my body clock, maybe I should have been a night shift worker in a previous life. And my body clock seems to be all kind of accented towards nighttime.
That's funny. So, on the and do you still have some time? I have a few more
Oh, yeah,
questions if
yeah.
you don't mind.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay. Sorry. I could talk to you for hours, man. This is awesome. So on the topic of exercise, obviously you big believer in exercising. What do you do for exercise besides, well, you tell me everything you do that falls under the umbrella of exercise.
Well, everything I do is in the boxing gym.
Okay.
Although I like to walk. I mean, I'm not saying I go on walks. In the better weather in Scotland, we go out to Royal Deeside, right, which is towards Balmoral, where the Queen lived. And we go out there. We drive, but the place there's a castle there out towards that called Crathis Castle, right? So we go out at weekends. We go out there and walk. I don't know, 3 miles around the estate of Crathis Castle, and we do different ones, but mainly that one. Or we walk along the River Dee, which is one of the most famous salmon rivers salmon fishing rivers in the world. And so we would maybe walk 3, 4 miles. And that would be a little bit of exercise. But my main exercise is in the gym. So when I go to the gym to shoot my videos and so on, so you're thinking, well, okay, I'm running tight for time. Let's do the videos. And we'll knock off 3 or 4 videos, maybe more, maybe 7 or 8 videos. And that's kind of short burst. But on a Sunday, for example, I go to the gym and there's a big turnout there. We maybe got 20 boxers and they had sparring and so on. But I would do a lot of what they're doing. And so I would do skipping, 3 rounds. I would do 3 rounds, shadow boxing, 3 on the punch bag. And then I don't spar, wish I could. Um, but so then I do my exercises, standing exercise, various exercises, and then floor it. I'm on my back. I'm doing sit ups. I'm doing press ups. I'm doing all the kind of stuff that I've done since I was a kid, really. People have moved on. They've walked on. I can see these young guys are all doing very different stuff that I try to keep up with, and that I can't. Maybe 80% of the time I can keep up with, but it's killer for the next day. I'll get out of my bed. But it's so I try. I can't do what they do, but I can. I could go some way towards that, and so that keeps me. So I'm in the gym 2 3 times a week, and I'm doing all that kind of stuff, and the stuff that you see on video, which is it's quite exhausting.
Right. Right. And in the winter or when it's colder, do you still walk at all or no? Those days you don't go walking.
If Generally speaking, yeah, we still go walking, but
Or you still
if it's
walk. Okay.
raining or snowing, it's not snowing so often these days, but if it's raining, of
Mhm.
course, then we wouldn't. But yeah, we still drive out and park the car, and away we go on our walk, and it's terrific. I mean, it does a lot, and that's what I say to people. I've said that on the videos. I've said I'm not telling you join a gym or go to a boxing club. If you can and
Right.
you want to do that, and if you can afford it, fine. The boxing clubs are, they're cheap. You just pay £2 or £3, £5 at the most. And you can't. There's no need for you to join a gym, a membership gym where you're paying, I don't know how many Canadian dollars a month. There's no need for that because the gym is on your doorstep. Now, I did a lot of videos in different parts of my city, down at the beach, uh, at different. different spots, different scenic spots throughout Aberdeen. Uh, in the city centre, they have a thing, Union Terrace Gardens, which they just spent £40 million on renovating and making better. I go there and I could skip and shadow box, early on a Sunday morning, even at 9 o'clock on
Right.
a Sunday morning. There's nobody there. So there are places, your back garden. What's wrong with doing some stuff in your back garden? Just movement
Hmm.
stuff, you know. And I think if you're thinking along those lines, maybe to join a gym or join a boxing club, no matter what your age is, start off in your back garden. Get some movement going. Get some shadow boxing going. Stuff that will make you tired. Stuff that will exhaust you, but will get those endorphins going and make you feel good.
I totally agree. I tell people that all the time now when they approach me or they ask for advice, and I say, you're overcomplicating it. I think you just want to develop the habit. And so this might sound stupid, but I do believe in starting small because you want to get the habit, right? And so even I tell them, even if you just pack your gym bag and you put your shoes on and you just get in the habit of doing that and then going to the gym, literally walk in and walk out, or if it's not the gym, whatever it is, but get into that routine of every day doing this at this time. And over time, it just becomes a part of you. It's an
You're
identity.
right.
Like if I miss my workouts, whether it's at home, at the gym, it doesn't matter. As long as I do something. If I miss them for more than a planned, like unless I planned to take a week off, if I miss more than a week, I start to go crazy. I'm like, I get irritable. Like I miss it. My body's like, what are you doing? I need to get back. It's almost like an addiction, you know?
Well, it is. It's a habit.
It's a healthy, a
It's a
healthy
healthy
addiction.
habit,
Yeah.
and
Healthy habit. Yeah.
nothing but good can come from it.
100%.
Mhm.
Like you said, for me, I was, in and out of trouble doing stupid kid stuff when I was younger, and the gym, exercise and martial arts for sure kept me out of
Sure.
trouble
Of course.
because I didn't want to let my coaches down. I didn't want to let my teammates down. I didn't want to let my training partners down. I knew like, oh, I got to meet them tomorrow morning. So when back then, my friends at that time were up to no good. They were like, oh, come out. I was like, I got to sleep. I got to be up
Yeah.
early because I can't let this guy down because this coach is going to kill me if I don't show up on time. And I don't want to do 200 push-ups. So,
Yeah, you're right. You're
so
absolutely right. Yeah.
it definitely saved my life in many ways. So
Good.
that's
I
why,
hear it because I've seen it hundreds of times where you get boys 14, 15, 16. They're coming to the gym, they're training, they're doing well. Some of them are becoming potential stars. And then you find, oh, where is he? He hasn't come back. All right,
mm,
he's missed out. Or maybe he's ill, maybe. Right. And weeks go by and he hasn't come back. And why hasn't he come back? Because his friends are saying, "I don't want to go to the gym. We're going down to meet some girls, or we're going to go to, a club or whatever. Come and join us." And he's kind of pooled between them. Now, I came across one recently. I was filming. I better not say where or who this guy is, but we were filming at a boxing club, and I was doing a seminar, and I was a boxing club. And I came across this guy who was, well, trying not to identify him. He was a big fella, tall, and he was 16. He might have been 50, can't remember, but he was extraordinarily tall for his age. And he was not exceptional, but he was very, very good as a boxer and had great potential. And he was giving it everything the night we were there. And and his dad was so proud. Dad was there, he was so proud of him, and he said, "Oh, he's completely bought into what you're teaching and all that." And I could see that. And then lo and behold, so here we are, 6 months or whatever down the line, and his coach contacted me. And he said to me, "You remember so and so?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." He said, "He hasn't come back." He said he was starting to come in recent weeks and taking too long to come out of the gym, come out of the changing room, kind of delaying entry to the gym, kind of killing time so he didn't have to do the work. And we kept saying, "Come on, what's keeping you? You know, I'll be there in a minute." That kind of stuff. And then he just stopped coming. And I said, "How old is he?" And the guy said, 16. And I said, "Well, that's that. You know why?" And he said, "Yeah, I know why. Because all his friends are saying, 'Come on, don't go to the gym. Come with us. We're going to have fun tonight. We're going to do this and we're going to do that.'" And when that comes into the equation, then you've just got to say, "Okay, that's life." You know, that's what kids do. You can go and say, "Look, you know, don't do this. You'll have a better life if you continue what you're doing." And my hope is, and I'm going to leave it a few weeks. I'm going to reach out to this kid and say, "Look, get back to the gym and just do it for me." And he maybe had his, maybe by then he will have had his hit, if you like, of going out with his pals and having
Mhm.
fun and enjoying himself. And he maybe see, okay, right, it's not all it's cracked up to be. I can still go out with them and such a night, but I'm still going to go to the gym 3 nights a week. So that's when you lose them. That's the age group that you lose them.
Yeah, for sure. That's when I strayed and but luckily I had a good coach and those things helped me out a lot. So Frank, I think we can wrap it up. But I do want to ask you a question as far as, you know, your biggest tips, and we kind of touched on a lot of different things, but if you could say the most important thing that you feel it is for somebody who's pursuing health or wants to improve their health, if you could say what do you feel is like the most important, if there is something in your mind?
What do you mean, the end product, the health thing, the fitness thing? What do you mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry. As far as like health, for somebody who wants to improve or optimize their health, you know, what do you think is really the most important thing, the foundation?
Well, the foundation, of course, is do everything in moderation, right?
Mm.
If you like a drink, do it in moderation. If you don't smoke, if you smoke, forget it. Give up smoking and all this vaping stuff that goes on, you know, that's only leading you down a path which is going to end as a no through road, as a cul-de-sac, where there's nothing at the end of it for you but bad health. So you got to give up that. Now I know that that's easy for me to say because I never smoked and I'm not a
Mhm.
big drinker. I mean, I'm going out with a group of journalist colleagues next week. 8 of us go out about 3 or 4 times a year. We have dinner and we have a few glasses of wine and we exchange our stories. That's about the limit of my alcohol intake. Um, you know, in any given year, for example. So if you're able to say, you know, guys go to the pub, they're drinking pints of beer, and I'm not trying to say that, you know, they're bad people. They're not bad people. But what I'm trying to say is, can you not see that without physical activity in your life, you are being diminished? If you have physical activity and therefore, in my view, mental alertness, how else are you going to live your life but in a good way? And if it makes you feel better and you can see a difference, if you're sitting there and think, well, I've been doing this for 6 weeks, I've given up smoking, you know, my drinking has been cut back, moderate stuff, I'm walking or I've joined a gym or whatever I do physically, it will change your life. And it will change your life for the better. And but what's most important, more important than anything else, it will prolong your life. If you, you know, if you keep down a path of smoking, drinking, poor eating, as much as anything is as bad as anything, all that stuff, um, then your lifestyle will come to a conclusion earlier. Your life will come to a conclusion earlier than it might have had you been looking after yourself. So everything in moderation. Look after your body, keep your mind sharp, read, be aware. Be aware of what's going on around you in the world. Have opinions, but make those opinions informed opinions. Don't just go and kind of rabbit stuff fake news from any of the social media challenges and believe in that. Ask questions. Go and examine things. I got a thing the other day come up, and a guy sent me a TikTok, and it was one of these, what do you call it, a screen save thing, TikTok, and it was to tell me that such and such football manager in England had quit. And I thought, oh, it's funny, I haven't heard of that. And I read two websites. So no, I'll tell you what, it was a big name TV star in the UK has died. And it looked great. It wasn't a TikTok, it was BBC News website. And I go, wow. So I immediately went on the BBC website. I could see it nowhere. But this person, believed it because it was on a social media.
Right.
And so, but we're getting off we've gotten off this subject here. And I'm sorry about that, Ricardo. It's all about moderation. Hold back with any overindulgence. If you overindulge in anything, then make it a one-off, or make it every now and again, once a year, and laugh about Easter, as we used to say in the Catholic Church. So make sure that you pull back. Make sure you gauge your own behavior, right? If you're thinking, wow, I have a sore head, hangover, I'm not going to do that again. And and try not to do it again. You will do it again, possibly, but then so keep everything kind of even keel. No highs, no lows in your eating or drinking or your lifestyle. Keep it on an even keel.
I like that. My dad used to say that a lot. Everything in moderation.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Frank. I think we're good. I got something coming up, but I really want to thank you for your time. But before I do that, do you have anything? I'm going to include it in the show notes and everything. But do you have anything that you want to promote, or where can people find you first of all?
Well, they can get me on Instagram, which is Frank's Noble Art, all written out one word. Frank's Noble Art. That's on Instagram. On TikTok, it's at Gilfeather, Gilfeather, which is lowercase. And what I'd quite like to tell you is this, and I had a beam I wanted about when I came back to training in the gym after the pandemic and so on. And I found that all the young boxers were wearing sparring gloves on the punch bag. And I thought, these are nice because they look great. Every company in the world, every sports company in the world has got boxing gloves. And then all different colors, and they're very attractive. And a company sent me 3 pairs, worth about $500. And I thought, well, these are lovely. And they wanted me to wear them. And this was the early days of TikTok, before we really took off on Instagram. And they said, oh, maybe you can wear these on the bike. And I said, okay, fine, no big deal, I'll wear them. And I tried them. And I tried them 2 or 3 or 4 times. And I was waking up in the middle of the night with sore fingers here, right? And I was thinking, what is that? And then I came to realize, I think it through. It's 8 gloves. Now, these gloves are the thumb is fixed to the main part of the glove by a little piece of elastic, which is in here. And so what that meant was you push your hand in the glove, the thumb goes in there, the fist goes in there, and they're so rigid that you can clench your fist like that. And what I'm saying is not really. Right.
Right. Can't make a full fist.
Right. So you like that. So I think, why can't I? And it's because of this. This is a kind of new thing to me. So I tried don't hurt my hands, I had to ditch them. And I went back to my old bag mitts, right? And the bag mitts are the old style bag mitts with kind of limited padding here, but no padding in the thumb. And that allowed me to do that. And that therefore allowed me to punch with the knuckle part of the glove, which is the proper way. So I'm thinking, all these young kids, because the gloves are dictating where their hand should be, are punching incorrectly. And that's why you've seen this kind of punching, because you can't get the hand turned. So they're punching like this.
Right.
So I thought, this is no good. So I think, how do I improve on the old style bag mitts? Well, I decided, let's get some made. And I got some samples made. And I made it a bit better padding here, 8 ounces. And I had the original bag mitt thumb, which was no padding. And it meant I could do that. And it changed everything. And so, okay, I tried them. I liked them. And I started making them. And the upshot is that I can't begin to tell you that we get orders from every corner of the world.
That's cool.
Yeah, Toronto is a big market, and Montreal, and also right across the States and the Far East, Tokyo, everywhere. So people have kind of caught on to this and thinking, he's absolutely right. This is what we need. We don't need these sparring gloves. That's my plug.
I love it. I'm going to try those out. I want to order a pair from you.
Well, you should have a look on the website, get them there. Be honest, we can't keep up. In fact, we're waiting for a new batch to come in on February 17th, and they're virtually all spoken for. And then after that, we'll have another batch. And we're going to bring out a white pair and a black pair. And they're old style, they're vintage looking. The brown ones are vintage, they're brown, cowhide, and honest to goodness, I'm getting people from boxing clubs all over the world saying, this has changed my way of training.
That's really cool. I'm actually going to grab a pair, and then I'll communicate with you guys so I can get in on the next batch.
Okay.
and then I'll make some videos on it and shout you guys out for sure.
Please do. That's what we want.
Yeah,
right, that's a
absolutely.
message.
Because I hit the bag for my cardio as well sometimes as a finisher or whatever. I'd love
to see that video then when you get the gloves.
Now I got, oh yes, for sure. I'm a little nervous. I'm like, now I'm gonna be like my technique and everything. I'm gonna be like, oh my God.
But just good.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay. Yeah, Frank, that's awesome. I will definitely include all that in the show notes and everything, and we'll be in touch very soon. And I really want to thank you again for taking the time to do this. You didn't have to. I know you're a busy guy, and you guys gave me a shot to talk, so that really means a lot to me. And I hope we can do this part 2 and a part 3, and who knows, maybe meet someday.
Anytime. Happy to do it. Ricardo, thank you very much. You've been a great host, and I've loved it. Thanks again.
Okay, take care, Frank.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And if possible, leave a review, forward it to your friends and family. Your support really helps the podcast grow, and I'm grateful to each and every one of you. Remember to sign up for my free 5 health hacks newsletter at youthfulagingsecrets.com/subscribe. I wish you good health, and I'll see you in the next episode.